So I want to tell you guys about this entrepreneur I know who started a sales operation company for a large nationwide manufacturer. This was years ago. He had the opportunity to buy the operation he started because the manufacturer was getting rid of their local sales operations and they were just going to be straight manufacturing. And he wanted to buy it. But he had no money. In fact, he didn't even have the $1,000 you needed at the time to start a company. And I thought to myself, this sounds like a great deal. I'm going to partner with this guy. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast. So I would handle the business side of the business and he would handle the selling. And in 3 years, we had accumulated a net worth of the company in today's dollars of $1.8 million and like over $12 million in sales.
Oh, wow. That is pretty impressive. The fact that you were able to do that in 3 years makes me think about what I've been doing with my company is we're starting to brainstorm what our next levels are and kind of going through that process, the process that you detail in your book. And one of the next level characteristics or metrics that I put down was that I want our company to be creditworthy within 3 years.
AJ, that's a great characteristic, especially when you're starting your first next level.
That's what I was thinking. And I'm not even thinking about it in terms of, we get a loan from a bank. I just want to be in a position where I could go get a loan from a bank.
Right.
Because to be honest with you, once we get to that point, I don't even know when it would be a good decision to take the loan or a bad decision to take the loan. And like, when we should look at other sources of financing. But I know a really good position to be in is a bank would give you money.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? In my anecdotal experience, and I think I can extrapolate this to millions of entrepreneurs and business owners, what we're going to talk about in this conversation, that millions don't understand. And they don't know how to use debt in a way to leverage and grow their companies. And so we want to speak to those guys and we want to give some real clear methodology here so that you can grow much faster and use debt wisely. Yeah. And so let's begin here, AJ, with what are you funding? People think, oh, I need a credit line or blah, blah, but they don't know why. What am I funding? So with this B2B business company I was just telling you about, we had 3 huge credit needs. And partly, one, we were buying the business and out from the manufacturer. That was one credit need. Another one was we had to finance receivables. So in this business, it was tradition that it was 100% receivables. There was no deposits or anything. And then when we're purchasing, it's commercial furniture. And so we would be purchasing the furniture. We didn't have inventory per se, but we had a short-term inventory because we might have to hold like a large order. We'd have to hold that inventory until we had it all ready. So then we can make one installation. So we had 3 buckets right there that we need to have credit for.
Yeah. And that makes me, I guess I'm in those millions of business owners that you just referenced in that I don't know what I would be funding at this moment in time. I know the next level is like 3 to 5 years. So I have a little bit of time to figure out that answer. But all of those things that you pointed to, those credit needs, all of those seem to be directly part of the business, like directly involved with the operations. And I think you said needs. So the money would be necessary. It wasn't extra spending that you were using for. It wasn't maybe like, oh, we're going to re-up the branding or, any like little small details. It was the things you talked about were very business critical in the moment.
Yeah. Let me explain. So if you wanted to sell $1 million, you might need $200,000 to $300,000 in credit capacity to fund that $1 million of sales. Okay. So if you only had, let's say $100,000, well, you might then be only able to do 300,000 in sales. Conversely, if you had $600,000 in funding, you could do $2 million in sales. So we were this was a leverage play. And I got to tell you, so the secret weapon is the business owner, because he could sell anything. And I remember asking him, I said, okay, what are your sales? What do you think you can hit in sales in the first 3 years? And it was like 3 million, 7 million, 12 million, something like that. And I mean, it was like, whoa. And they had been doing 1 million. And he goes, yeah, I could turn on the gas. I could totally do this. And 3 years later, I said, you can do that. We'll have almost $2 million in net worth in this company. And he hit those sales and we had the net worth because of a lot of factors. So we got to get into the details there.
But also what you just said is he was basically making a bet on himself then. If you're going to be leveraged in how you run the company and you need those sales to back up that leverage, he's taking a big bet on himself, and you jumping in business with him was taking a big bet on him that this guy's going to be able to sell it.
Well, yes and no, because the way we did the funding, it wasn't like we went out and so like if you like in a leverage play like that and you borrow $300,000, it's not that you go get the 300,000. You borrow as you need it. So it's called a credit line, and then you pay it back. And so it's moving constantly. So you use the money to fund the sale. Once the sale collects, you pay the line back down. But if we're talking about funding like what you were just mentioning, like branding and advertising and things like that, that may be more of a fixed note. All right. Now, in your business, I could totally see you needing to fund inventory. Or if it depends what your manufacturing is, but you may have to fund the manufacturing process. Okay. Now, once you sell, then you can put that money back. All right. More than likely, unless they're buying large quantities from you, you're probably not going to offer terms. You're probably just going to take a credit card. But the inventory and even the manufacturing process could be a big credit need. And if you don't have enough credit, you're out of product, you can't sell.
So are you saying a credit line is better when it's kind of funding your sales so you can pay it back as you go, whereas a fixed loan in the traditional sense is better if you have multiple costs that have a heavy upfront burden? So I guess a credit line is more for ongoing expenditures, where a big loan is for a lot of to fund a lot of upfront costs.
Okay, yeah. So let's shift the conversation, AJ, to what does the banker need? What does he need from you, the entrepreneur, business owner, borrower? And for a lot of guys out there and gals, this is like top secret information. Nobody knows until I go meet with the banker. It's not top secret. You need to know this. Tune in. This is so easy and important to know.
Yeah, it does sound top secret to me. And that's kind of like, I'm thinking of something from a past episode when we were talking about dealing with bankers. That makes me think about the loan committee and like the wise men at the bank, or like what is the secret wisdom that they have that they need on my business that I don't know of.
Right. So you got the picture. Two basic things. What are the assets that you're borrowing against? Okay. So, and then let me just tell you the second one, and then we'll break them apart. And how are you going to pay back the loan? All right. So what are the assets? In other words, what the bank needs is, in the case of default, you have to think in terms of case of default. Not that anyone's going to do that, but how would they liquidate and get their money back? What would they liquidate? So I want to borrow $10,000 for marketing. But they can't lend on that. You go, oh, I have a friend. Everyone has a friend. I have a friend who borrowed $10,000 for marketing. No, they didn't. Here's what they borrowed. They borrowed $10,000 against their personal balance sheet. It's like using your credit card. Okay. Now, if you say, I want to borrow $10,000 to manufacture this inventory, well, and so a credit line is what you would use there. You're not going to have a fixed note. So a credit line works like this. You get approved for a $10,000 credit line. You can use it whenever you want. You borrow, if you only borrow $1,000, then you're just paying interest on the $1,000. You don't have to pay it back. You just have to pay the interest every month. Now, the idea is when you hit 10 grand, you're out of credit line. Okay. Well, what you want to do is, like, you borrow $1,000, you make those $1,000 a product, you sell them, let's say for $2,000. So you take $1,000 and you pay the credit line back, because that was your cost of materials that you had to borrow because you didn't have any money for cost of materials. Right.
And then at that point, could you borrow another 10,000 if you needed, because you paid back the one?
Yeah. Yeah. So you've paid the line down $1,000. So now you've got your full line.
Got it.
And so you could borrow all the way up to 10, but if you want to borrow any more, you're going to have to pay the line back or put in for a larger credit line. And that's the way you grow your credit line, is by moving the line and showing the need. Why would you need a larger credit line? Because of increased sales. And increased sales, if you've got a good profit margin, which that's another episode, then you're making money.
Got it. And that's how you pay them back. They
Right.
can see that the money they're lending you is generating cash flow.
Right. Now, another borrowing need could be, I need equipment to manufacture this, or I need, let's just say I need equipment to manufacture your product. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a fixed note. So let's say I need $10,000 to buy the equipment, and so I get a fixed note. Well, what that means is I've got to pay that back. I'm going to make monthly payments, if it's a 3-year note, a 5-year note, or whatever, but I'm going to be making, so it's like a mortgage. It's like your home mortgage. So you're paying it back every month, but the bank has a lien on that piece of equipment. What that means is they basically, at any point of, if you default, they can go take that equipment and go sell it if they can. And it doesn't matter if it's the first payment or the last payment. So let's say you've paid the note down to $9,500 and you owe $500 and you don't pay the $500. They can come take that piece of equipment and sell it to get their $500, and then they would give you the rest. But they have no incentive to sell it for more than $500 because that's all they need.
Got it. And then you're just stuck. I paid for all that equipment, and
now
I got nothing to show for it.
Don't
default. Yeah, clear.
Yeah. So
you have other problems if you're defaulting, for sure. But
that's, yeah. So that's not the main thing. That's not the thing to focus on. Here's what you need to focus on. You don't want to borrow for equipment that isn't going to make you a boatload of money.
Much more than the interest expense and the paying back the principal of that equipment. Right.
So office furniture. Go to the used office store. Buy it for $50. Okay. Don't borrow money for stuff like that. Oh, I can buy a car now. I need a truck. I'm in the construction business. Okay, fine. But don't borrow for $100,000 truck. Go get a used one. Because that truck isn't making you money like the same amount of money, because you're using up your credit ability to borrow.
If you get a loan for that truck and it's $100,000, and then you're like, oh, well, now I need a loan for whatever equipment we need, the bank's going to go, well, you already have $100,000 in debt, and that's against the truck. You're just increasing how much money you have outstanding, which increases the likelihood that you default in the eyes of the bank.
Well, that's not the way it works.
Okay.
That's the way it ends up, but that's not the means to the end. Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's what's going on. Because you could say to me, well, George, wait a minute. I bought $100,000 truck. I put a few dollars onto it. I owe $99,000. I borrowed $99,000. So the bank could sell the truck and get their money. I go, that leads us to the second thing the bank needs to know is, how are you going to pay us back? Now, here's what you have to understand about all debt. All debt repayment comes out of your profits. If you don't have profits, you cannot pay the bank back. Think of it this way. The first $100,000 you make is to go pay that truck off, or your monthly payment. Say your monthly payment's $1,000 a month. So $1,000 out of your profits going for debt service. That's what they call it. Now, the debt service is principal and interest. Okay. Now, this is a fixed note. All right. So let's say you get 10 grand on your own personal balance sheet because you've got credit worthiness, like a credit card, and you put that into branding or marketing, something soft. Okay. There's nothing you can borrow against. Except I can just come at, oh, and by the way, as a small business owner, you are going to pledge all your personal assets too. So they can not only come after everything in the business, but they can come out of after everything in your own personal life as well. So if you're going to go bankrupt, you're going to have to go bankrupt as a business and personally too. Just FYI. That's pretty standard. Now, I would try not to do that, but as a first-time borrower,
sounds like a nightmare.
As a first-time borrower, you're not going to be able to get away with that, probably. That's why I'm saying don't buy something that isn't going to make you a lot of money, even if it's a fixed note. So manufacturing equipment is going to make you a lot of money. If I spend this 10 grand on this manufacturing equipment, then I can, and this equipment is going to last 10 years. I can make a lot of equipment with this.
And yeah, like you said, that first-time borrower thing, that sounds pretty scary to me. What can you do? What's the most important thing you could do to build credit worthiness and kind of avoid that situation?
The simple answer is you need a strong balance sheet. And now everyone just said, oh, great. Now they go into the wonky stuff that I'm not going to understand. So let me just explain what I'm talking about. The balance sheet is really quite simple in concept. You have assets. Those are things you own and after depreciation. Okay. So this is more or less what the value of those current value of those assets would be. Cash is cash. That's easy. Receivables. That's what people owe you. So we would just want to know, is that collectible? Usually if it's under 90 days, it's collectible. Over 90 days, good luck. And I'm telling you how the banker's going to view it. And they're going to discount your receivables by 20% anyhow. Even current ones, and or 75, or 25%. So in other words, what I mean there is, it's like on receivables, a credit line you can borrow for your receivables, like I did with this commercial manufacturer, but they only gave me, like if I had $1 on receivables, they'd only loan me 75 cents. Okay. And usually it's like 50 cents on inventory. Okay. Those are like, so if the inventory is worth $1, they'll give me 50 cents on it. Those are all assets. And then of course, any fixed equipment. Then you have in the balance sheet liabilities. Liabilities are all the things you owe, including the bank loan. So you take your assets, that's a plus. You take your liabilities, that's a minus. And what you have left over is the net worth of the company, which is not the value of the company. It's if you liquidated the assets, if you sold off, collected all the assets, and you paid off all the liabilities, the net worth is what you'd have. And so what I said in the opening was, with this commercial business, in 3 years, we had a net worth of $1.8 million. In other words, when we sold off and collected all the assets, we paid off all the liabilities, we'd have $1.8 million left over.
So you went from $0 in assets to $1.8 million in assets over the amount of money that you borrowed, which is pretty impressive to me.
Right. And we did it on tens of millions of dollars of sales. Okay. I mean, we ramped up and we were ramping really fast, which sucks cash out.
Yeah. And so as you were ramping up, were you just hyper focused on building up your net worth?
Yes. And that's the key. And so remember, the original business owner, startup guy, entrepreneur, he's got no money. Now we've got, within a year or 18 months, I mean, our cash flow is super positive. And he's like, oh, going to go spend it. I can go buy a new house and a boat and blah. And I know you can't. You're not about to take that money out of this company. We're going to keep you on this salary. You said this salary pays the bills. It's good enough you can live on. We want to stick to that. We want to build the net worth of the company up. Now, here's the crazy thing. Why do I need the bank? Well, if I've got a value of $1.8 million, all right, sorry, a net worth of $1.8 million, the company was probably valued at 5.
That's to increase your own personal return.
Well, where is the money? Well, we might have only had a few $100,000 in cash.
Got it. And
we probably had $1 million tied up in receivables, at least. I mean, so think about it. If you're running $1 million a month in sales, you're going to have a lot of money tied up in sales. I mean, in receivables from the sales, easily. And so you could easily have $1 million in receivables over like 90 days of receivables. And we did have certain receivables that were slow to pay because they were like government contracts and things like that. And then you've got your, what we called work in progress was really funding inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably another $500,000 right there. There's your 1.8 million.
Got it. So you need the bank not just to boost your personal return, but it's just a cash flow issue. The bank they have all the cash. And as you accumulate assets, a lot of those become illiquid, or you're not able to readily convert those to cash. But the bank, that's what they're in the business of.
Well,
having liquid cash.
Yeah. Okay. This opens the door to something called cash velocity. And it's not that we had it tied up in fixed assets. We had it tied up in assets because we're ramping up sales. And the faster you're growing in sales, the more borrowing it's going to take to fund those sales. And you cannot internally capitalize and so I'm using wonky terms that are going to tease you guys to future episodes.
Yeah, so getting the cash from the bank does help you ramp up faster. But I have a kind of a general question here in terms of advice. You hit on a few points, but do you have just like some general advice on how do you borrow? How do you think about borrowing? Kind of tie this all together?
Yes. I think the number one thing you need to remember is you've got to be disciplined with your borrowing. And that's really hard because let's say you're used to making, I don't know, a few $1,000s a month in salary. Now your business is making $20,000 a month, $50,000, $100,000. And in this owner's case, $1 million of revenue. There's a lot of cash coming in. There's a lot of cash going out. And you have to understand your numbers to be business savvy about everything we're talking about.
And that sounds like a whole nother topic.
It is. It's absolutely. Oh, there's a lot more topics in this.
Yeah. And it reminds me of another topic I'm thinking of, like you're just saying. I want to be able to buy a house somewhat soon in the next decade would be nice. That is a whole nother level of borrowing, and that's on the personal side of things.
Right.
Which I would love to get into.
Yeah, we should talk about that because, and that may be another way to understand business borrowing because it's similar but different, but it's the same fundamental concepts. So, guys, we're going to get into much more in all of this over the coming podcasts. And so thanks for joining us. If you want more content like this one, check out this video right here. I know you're going to love it. And until next week, may you live truly free.